So I just wanted to come on here and talk about some of the effect that the language is having on our mental health, all the language that we're seeing at the moment on social media or on the news, or messages between friends that we're sending each other, status updates, Instagram, all that kind of stuff. For example, I've made a list of buzzwords here. A lot of them are buzzwords. I mean, I've heard the word unprecedented a million times in the last couple of days, and you know what it's like when you hear a new word, you suddenly start hearing it all over the place, and you think, is that because it's new, or is it because my mind has picked up on it? Anyway, the list that I have so far is let's have a little look. So we've got pandemic, obviously, peak or the peak, coronavirus, the virus, infected, contagious, panic buying, peacetime, war, invisible enemy, global crisis, vulnerable, mortality rates, uncertainty, lockdown, Armageddon, apocalypse, jumped, spread, breaking news. So there's obviously other words which can be added to that, but we are just having like a constant influx of these words, and a constant influx of negative news, and a constant influx of panic and fear and everything. And even even the way that these kind of things are presented, like a lot of the time when people are writing posts to share on Facebook, or there's like headlines and stuff, it will be with lots of exclamation marks or bold type or capital letters and things like that. And if you're, especially at the moment, if you're at home and especially on your own, if you're relying to go online for reassurance and to connect with people, if you've got like a massive influx of all of this constantly on your news feed, in messages between friends and stuff, then it's going to affect your mental health. If you think about it, when people are getting hypnotized, or for example, when we have, I don't know if any of you have ever kind of created like and maintained like positive affirmations, when you just repeat the same, you have your lovely positive affirmations and you kind of might repeat them to yourself every night or something, for them to kind of sink into your brain. And if you think about the effect of this, all of these negative words, all of these negative phrases, all of this negative news which is being thrown at us 24/7, the effect that that's having on our brain, whether we realise that or not, it's training our brain, it's training us, conditioning us to feel continuously panicked and anxious and fearful, which is obviously not good. And I'm not denying, obviously, the situation is pretty bad, as a massive understatement. What's happening in the world now, yeah, it is horrifying. It is negative. I'm not saying that it's not true. I'm not saying that those words aren't true. I'm not saying that the coronavirus shouldn't be called an invisible enemy, because it is invisible. I'm not saying that it shouldn't. But do you really think it's healthy to be listening to that 24/7? Listening to it, seeing it, scrolling through it, texting people stuff about it? No, it's not healthy. It's not healthy. Our brains are just being conditioned and getting used to being in a high state of panic by seeing all of this. So we really should be mindful, for example, just being on Facebook and stuff, the kind of stuff that we're posting, we should be coming together now, not spreading panic, not spreading fear and things, and creating like mass hysteria. Everyone wants to post stuff and share stuff, and that is fine. Like, all of our feelings and anxieties are completely valid right now. Of course they are. I mean, it is a pandemic, it is. But I think that if we have to come together looking after each other, let's just be mindful of these things. Let's not share a million things just focusing on the negative news of lots of exclamation marks and bold type and capital letters and all this kind of stuff. And, you know, let's just be mindful of those people which are sitting at home trying to scroll through, being like, I'm at home, I'm self-isolating, I just want to like see what everyone's up to, and it's like, oh my god, just getting bombarded with all this kind of stuff. So yes, social media is for posting and sharing and freedom of speech, but there are also groups you can do that in. There are specific coronavirus groups where you can go and post away to your heart's content, and you've got everyone there, you know, reading stuff. Alternatively, if you're posting something, put like a trigger warning so people can think, oh, I don't want to see that, you know. You know, why do people do this as well? It's like they're panicked and fearful. You know, a lot of it is people's perception of things, what they think is happening. Worst case scenarios, you know, looking for reassurance. There's a lot of reasons why this is happening. And also, if you think about the news channels, it's in their interest to make the news shocking. You know, of course they want to make the news as shocking as possible. So we tune in and we're like, oh my god, did you see that on the news? And you just keep tuning in, and you kind of get addicted to it. You get kind of dependent on it. You know, it's like, it's almost like, you know, there is something called a trauma bond that kind of develops when you're in a relationship, let's say in a toxic relationship with a narcissist, or, you know, this kind of relationship where it actually alters the chemicals in your brain, and it's called a trauma bond. And it's almost like we get trauma bonded. This is a toxic relationship. We almost start getting addicted to what's the next bad news, you know. And yeah, the news channels want it to be bad. They don't want it to be bad, obviously. What I mean is it's in their intention to increase their ratings. They're still running a business, they're still got their reputation, they still want everyone to be like, oh my god, we've got to tune in, what's happening now. They still want to be the most shocking, you know, the most attention grabbing. They want people to rely on them, they want to have their ratings up. So for that reason as well, they might recycle the same story on a news channel with breaking news in block, you know, in capitals with exclamation marks or whatever. But it might be, A, the news isn't that breaking, and B, you've just repeated it like 20 times today. But to see that constant feed of breaking news, it's like, you know, anxiety levels go up. What else? Yeah, so the other thing is, it's just like some examples I wanted to point out. For example, the breaking news is a big one. This other one that's like a buzzword is jumped. You know, wherever it is, has jumped by 600 cases today, or 6,000 cases today, or whatever. The UK, for example, and possibly other places, are not testing, and we're not going to know how many cases there are. We're just not going to know that. So when it says it's jumped, these cases were there. They didn't just suddenly jump in the last 5 minutes, you know. These cases were there already. They just got tested. So there's like, these cases have been recorded. They didn't jump suddenly in the last 1 second. You know, there's like 6,000 new cases, and, you know, it's this kind of language that makes people shocked and like anxious. Jumped, you know, do you know what I mean? The other thing is, what else? Oh yeah, the other thing, jumped. Oh yeah, a lot of fake news around, loads of fake news around, obviously, because everyone wants to have like a good story. So yeah, when you're seeing things, just consider, is it a trustworthy news source? Is it really true? Like, or is it just fake news? I mean, for example, I'm just thinking about some stuff that I saw recently, people posting things about, you know, the riots are starting in London, and there was like a burnt out bus in Peckham and things like that. Whereas those pictures were actually from the London riots a few years back. So it's just scaremongering. Don't believe everything you see. A lot of stuff that's being shared isn't true, it's fake news. pictures of the army coming in. Again, there was quite a few posts actually of army which were in London, but they were actually like fake pictures from an army drill like a couple of years ago. Not saying that the army's not going to come into London, but what I'm trying to say is people jump on stuff like this, the news or whoever it is, to share and shock and get a reaction and get into a discussion and all that kind of thing. What else? Oh yes, I've seen something recently about petrol pumps. So there's been quite a few posts and messages going around. So, you know, if you use petrol pumps, apparently that can spread the virus, you know, loaded with like buzzwords and things. Wash your hands and pass us around so it doesn't spread. And, you know, in that one little message alone, there's loads of things. But the thing is, honestly, we've been told to wash our hands. We've been told that it stays on surfaces. So the petrol pumps really isn't breaking news, is it? We know that we've got to wash our hands. Like, everyone uses a petrol pump. It's just common sense. We've got to wash our hands. It's like saying, let me think of something. It's like making up a breaking news headline to say, if you touch, when you open a door or a door handle, that can spread the virus. You need to wash your hands. If you take the tube and put your hand on the escalator, you've got to wash your hands. That spreads the virus. We know that. Like the petrol pumps thing, it's just another scaremongering thing in my opinion, because it shouldn't just be about petrol pumps. We just need to know, if you touch something, especially if it's been touched by loads of other people, stuff like virus can live there on surfaces, so wash your hands, right? So yeah, all kinds of things like this. I'm just thinking what else, if I made a note of anything else. No, I think that's all my buzzwords and examples, but I mean there's loads more that I don't want to go into it because this video will end up being like hours long. But can you see, I just really want to highlight that, because we're being bombarded with all this info and thinking, oh my god, it might just be a 5-minute scroll, you know, throughout the day on Facebook, but all of this information is getting loaded into our brain and making us feel fearful and anxious. So I definitely would recommend, you know, there are things we can do to lessen our anxiety at this time, and I will do another video on like mental health tips to keep us grounded and to kind of conquer anxiety at this time. But just quickly now, really, I mean, firstly, boundaries. You know, tell your friends, you know, if you've got a friend that keeps sending you negative updates with horrifying news all the time. I mean, the things that I'm seeing people sending is stuff like really graphic things, you know. I don't even want to go into them because I don't want to trigger anyone, but that's fine, you know, but be mindful. Maybe someone doesn't want to be bombarded with all this stuff. You don't know their mental health, their state of their mental health. You can at least say like trigger warning or something, you know. So have boundaries with friends. If you don't want to get stuff like that, you're entitled to say, listen, I'm really sorry, but at the moment I don't want to like focus on any of this stuff. You're allowed to say that. Unfollow people on social media that are posting all this stuff. If it's upsetting you, just unfollow them. You've got every right to do that as well. You know, self-care is so important right now, especially for those, well, especially for all of us. I mean, all of us need to think about self-care, self-love, and protecting our mental health. Yeah, the other thing is take a break. So don't be watching the news. Don't have Sky News on in the background, or I don't, they say Sky, any news like that that's on 24 hours. Just don't have it on in the background all the time. Even if you think you're not watching it, it's going to be going into your brain subconsciously. So just don't do that. Just don't do it. Stop it. Watch the news maybe once a day or twice a day. To be honest, the amount of fake breaking news that we have, you could, with the updates 20 times a day, you could probably watch it 15 minutes a day once, and you'll probably get the same amount of updates condensed into one sitting. You know what I mean? So yeah, definitely limit that, or limit your social media. Also, don't focus on the negative. Everyone's focusing on the negative. How many people have died, how fast is it spreading, and all this kind of, all the negative things, which, yes, it's happening, okay? We need to be informed, we need to stay informed, knowledge is power, but don't look at just those things. Make sure you have a balanced view. Look at positive things as well. There are lots of positive things in between all this, and there is life which is carrying on despite this. We can still interact with our friends, we can still, chill out with our pets or whatever it is we want to do. We can still do things online, we can still work online, we can still do our housework, we can still do some exercise. There's so many things that we can still be doing. Focus on the positive stories, focus on the community, focus on your family, on your friends, focus on the recovery numbers. You don't need to be just focusing on people dying. It's really sad, and yeah, we should have the information, but that's not the only thing we should be focusing on. So yeah, so I think that's all I want to say for now. It was 16 minutes, so it wasn't that quick after all, but yeah, that was just a little something that I wanted to highlight, and I think it's really important to be mindful about these things. And I do understand now why we've been asked to sing happy birthday when we wash our hands, because that's definitely a bit better than focusing on all of those horrible words, isn't it? So yeah, stay safe, stay well, and keep singing happy birthday.